to basically have some new, some used, and then a lot of my dad's knowledge, and making this motor make, what, 750, 800?
Welcome to DCI Motorsports. My name is Don Johnston, and this is my son,
Brandon Johnston.
Very good, son. So anyhow, we are going to take you guys on a little adventure. We're going to build a 71 Le Mans drag car. And we're going to use some parts that I used back in the late 80s, early 90s to build my race car. And today, we're going to show you those parts that we're going to use.
But first things first, let's get some beer going.
Absolutely. You know what? Thank you, Randy and Patty Michaels. This beer is awesome. You know what? I love it. It's handcrafted, I do believe. It's only available in Wisconsin. And I can't say the name, I don't think, right? So we're going to just guess on this. But New Glarus, or Glarus, I'm not sure, brewing company. But anyhow, it is really good. I'm not going to lie, I've already had a couple. So this is spectacular. Thank you for coming down from Wisconsin, visiting me at DCI Motorsports, and bringing me this wonderful gift. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. All right, so back to the other fun stuff. So we got all of our parts here for the motor, and it's going to be a Pontiac 455 with a Ram Air Force iron head, and we're going to basically have some new, some used, and then a lot of my dad's knowledge, and making this motor make, what, 750, 800?
Back when I used to run these heads in standard configuration or standard port configuration without the push rod being moved over, we dynoed at 727 and 3,680 pound, 81 Grand Prix. The car ran 1020s at like 136 to 138 mile an hour, which the mile an hour is way higher than the ET showed, but it was because I had a factory suspension under the car. The car left literally on the right rear tire, and it was cool to watch. I got a lot of pictures taken of that car. As a matter of fact, I think it was even on ESPN from back then. But so yeah, we're going to take that old school technology and we're going to improve it a little bit and see if we can get close to 800 horsepower now.
So what would be what you consider the whole, how can I put this, what makes this motor make the power? Camshaft, crankshaft, or the cylinder heads, carburetor? What makes it make that much power? It's not, I mean, I know it's a whole package, but what is the main factor behind the power?
Well, like you just stated, it's a combination. So if we don't get the combo right, it doesn't matter. You can have the best cylinder head, you can have the best camshaft, you can have the best intake, doesn't matter. You gotta have the combination. But the cylinder head is where the horsepower is at. So that's where we're going to focus most of our effort on this build.
So the cylinder head's a Ram Air 4 head.
Correct. 1969 Ram Air 4.
69 Ram Air 4 head. And so, I mean, why would we want to use these heads over a Ram Air 3 or a Ram Air 5? I mean,
well, you know what? This was the top of the line cylinder head for Pontiacs back in the day. And you know, they had 1968. They actually had a Ram Air 2, which had a round exhaust port. I don't know if you can see that in this video or not, but the nice part about the round exhaust port is that we can get a bigger tube header on this thing. And you need a big tube header to make horsepower. You know what? You can get all the air in the motor, but you got to get it out too. So we're going to, you know, this cylinder head was top of the line technology back in 1969 and 70, and because the Ram Air 5-cylinder head that I have reproduced was not available on production cars. It was available over the counter, but you couldn't get it on a production car. So this was actually the best cylinder head available for the average guy back in 69 and 70.
So what would these heads come on? Big cars?
No, those came on GTOs and Trans Ams.
Trans Ams?
Well, you could get it on a Firebird formula too, but yeah.
So you had to go to the junkyard, find, hopefully someone wrecked their 69 Trans Am or 60.
You are not going to find these at the junkyard. These are really rare cylinder heads. So, you know, that these cylinder heads, because they produced a limited number of cars with the Ram Air 4 head, it was the highest horsepower option available on the build sheet. Not very many guys ordered them because they were, you know, back then, I don't know what the actual price was to buy the Ram Air 4 engine, but I think it was like somewhere around $700-800 for that option. And that was a lot of money back in 69, 70. So you're not going to find a lot of those. They're very rare.
So how would you come across these? Go to your neighbor's house that had a 69 Trans Am and take them off his car while he's sleeping?
No, you're not going to do that. But you know what? You could order them over the counter. You could go to the dealership and you could order a set. And I don't know what they retail for back then, but you could go to the dealer. Or if you were fortunate enough to have a buddy or somebody that wrecked his GTO with a Ram Air 4 in it or Trans Am, you could see if you could buy them from him. But these heads, they're rare. I mean, I purchased these heads back in like 1980, and I paid $2,500 for them in 1980. That's back in '80. That was a lot of money, and that shows the rarity of these cylinder heads.
So Edelbrock, they didn't have anything for Pontiac back then.
No, they did not. We didn't have any aluminum cylinder heads for a long time for Pontiacs.
So if you wanted to make power, it had to be these.
Yeah, absolutely. You had to find a set of Ram Air 4 cylinder heads.
And the Ram Air 5 stuff was just, it still is hard to find factory stuff.
Yeah, even back then. I mean, you know what? When I purchased these Ram Air 4 cylinder heads, I had an opportunity to buy a set of factory Ram Air 5 heads, and even back then the guys wanted $3,500 a set for them, because those are even rarer than Ram Air 4 heads.
Interesting. So what, I mean, is this, what combustion chambers on this? And
Well, you know, factory, I think these were rated at 72 cc's. My cylinder heads, we milled them down so they're like 63 to 65 cc's because I wanted a lot of compression. And back, you know, when I was racing fuel was only $3 a gallon, and I believe now it's like $13 a gallon.
so will we have to worry about detonation?
If we don't use racing fuel, we will, absolutely.
So this is going to be a full race gas motor, or?
Yeah, absolutely, we're going to have to run racing fuel in this.
And that's
thing.
only because of the compression.
Yes.
Okay.
So yep, and so yeah, I mean, you know what? And this is a super rare intake manifold. That intake manifold is a Magnesium Doug Nash single 4 intake. I converted to a Dominator. It originally was a 4150 style carb. And I don't know if anybody or if all you guys understand the difference between the two, but the Dominator has much bigger bore or throttle plate size in it. And because of that, they had to spread the bolt pattern out on these things so that it could accommodate the bore or the throttle shaft size. So, but anyway, I converted this from a 4150 to a 4500 series carburetor, and I actually ran a 1050 CFM carb on the street with my car. And I'm not saying it got the best fuel economy, but back then we didn't really care because pump gas, show my age a little bit, was only around 90 cents a gallon. So
yeah, but even with gas prices the way they are now, this is America, and we still don't care.
that's right, we still don't care. We love our hot rods.
Yep. So this is, I guess you'd say, like the king daddy of carburetors. This is going to be, CFM wise, the most you can get.
Yeah, so what you do is, you know what, you increase the throttle plate size, it increases the CFM of the carburetor, the pressure drop across the carburetor, and so we, yeah, that you want to run as big a carb as the engine will tolerate. And of course, you can't put a big carburetor on a small block Chevy and expect it to run. It's not going to work that way. The rest of the combo has to be there too.
And you said this is magnesium. Now, is magnesium lighter than aluminum?
Yeah, it's a little bit lighter than aluminum. I don't really understand why they made this intake out of the magnesium, but I do believe it was because of a weight thing. And so, you know, but the problem with magnesium is, and if you guys have researched it any, magnesium when it's turned to dust will explode. It's actually flammable. And so I'm not real sure why they did that. So if the intake were to catch on fire, or the backfire through the carburetor, it might actually catch on fire.
That's comforting.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to be using, so this we had on the shelf.
Yes,
Intake we had on the shelf. This is the original one you used on the Grand Prix.
it is. Back in
And
the
are
day.
these the heads you used on the Grand Prix?
It is. Those
So-
heads, I've had those things for over 30 years.
So those heads we're going to be reusing.
Yep.
So what we did buy new are pistons, bearings, and rods, right?
Correct. So you know what we did? We improved it a little bit on what I used to run back then. I back in the day we didn't have any parts. You know what? We didn't have cranks. I mean we did, but you had to spend a lot of money for them. Moldex made a crank. The factory actually made some ram air 5 forged crankshafts, but those were again very rare and hard to find. And so I ran a cast crankshaft and cast connecting rods with ARP rod bolts and TRW pistons. We didn't have the technology back then that we have today. So today we have available to us, we got forged connecting rod, and thankfully Eagle Specialties came out with that for Pontiacs, and we have DSS who makes a forged piston, and so yeah, I mean this is a beautiful piece for the money. These pistons retail for right around $750, and which is a cheaper alternative to like Ross Racing, which is a good piston too, or JE Racing piston. But for the money, this is a very good option for us, and we're going to use these in this build. So, but yeah, I mean, compared to what I used to run, and I was spinning the motor at 6,800, this is great technology.
So with spinning the motor that high, is it better to have an H-beam or an I-beam connecting rod?
Well, again, that's depends on the application and the manufacturer of the rod. Carrillo makes a really killer A-beam connecting rod. Eagle made an H-beam connecting rod, and an H-beam and an A-beam connecting rod. The difference is if you hold the connecting rod in this manner, it makes an H. It goes like this on the top, it goes like that on the bottom, so it looks like an H. They carved this out on the center here. And what they do that for is to lighten the connecting rod up and still maintain the strength because the sides are still pretty wide on this thing, so it has a little strength. An A-beam connecting rod, if you hold it up like this, has a flat spot on here, A-beam, or an I-beam. They call it an A-beam or an I-beam. It has a flat on here and a flat on here, and the center is divoted out, or scalloped out, yeah. And so that's the difference between an H-beam and an I-beam connecting rod. And they both have advantages. Some manufacturers, they redesigned the I-beam connecting rod to be a little bit stronger. They call it an A-beam. That's why I keep referring to it as an A-beam.
All right. So with that being said, the crankshaft. It's an Ohio crankshaft, and now is that a forged one, or is that a billet one? Is that a cast one? Is that?
Yeah, this is the crankshaft we're going to be using this engine is an Ohio crankshaft, which they offer a forged 4340 steel forged crankshaft that has a 4250 stroke, uses a big block Chevy rod bearing, has a 2200 rod journal, and has a In this particular application, we're gonna use a 455 block, so. it's
But
got
you
a-
said Chevy bearing? Chevy bearing?
Yeah, use the big block Chevy connecting rod bearing.
So we're gonna have Chevy parts inside of our Pontiac.
Yes, we are. We're gonna have a Chevy connecting rod bearing in our Pontiac. Hey, you know what? What's wrong with that?
What's the world coming to?
Whatever it takes to go fast, I don't care. So, but yeah, we're gonna have. I mean, if you want, this is technically a Chevy connecting rod. It's a 6/800 rod and it has a big block Chevy rod drum. So we're gonna use that, and that's the best product on the market right now for us. What we're doing. But anyway, this crankshaft's got a little bit more stroke. Factory stroke's 4.210. This is 4.250. So we're going to end up, instead of like my engine was, because I ran 60 over, it was 468 cubic inches. This one here will be a 472. But you know what, I don't think we bored this one over 60, so it's not a 4.210 bore. I think we have a 4.180 bore. What's on the piston box there? No, it's, 4.190 bore.
Yep.
So it's going to be a little bit shy of 471 or 472 cubic inches. Probably be a 468. That's okay though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the camshaft is a roller cam.
It is. And I ran a roller cam back then too. So these are made out of billet steel.
And is that a custom grind?
This cam is, I do believe, a custom grind. Yes, this is an old Ultradyne cam. You know what? This might be one of the cams I ran back in the day. I don't know where you guys dug this up out of, but Ultradyne's not even in business anymore. So yeah, this is an old cam, and I probably ran this. I went through a ton of cams, and I almost said a bad word. But anyway, I went through a lot of camshafts learning what I learned about Pontiac engines, and I'm sure this is one of them. So I don't know the exact specs. I do have an Ultradyne catalog. I'll dig it out and I'll try to figure out what this is. But anyway, we're going to use this camshaft. I do believe this thing's somewhere in the mid 270s, 280s at 50, with a right around a 700-inch lift. So yeah,
That's a big lift. So with this camshaft, and spoiler alert, we are going to be doing a video just on the cylinder heads for this build, and we're going to be doing some trick stuff with it. We're going to be moving the valve.
not the valve, the push rod.
Push rod, I'm sorry, push rod. And with moving the push rod, how does this cam have to be further spaced apart?
Nope, absolutely not. What we're going to do is we're going to use those lifters you got laying over there.
Oh, okay.
That's a rocker.
Or yes,
Come on, son.
I'm sorry.
You're making us look bad.
Brain fart, all right?
Alright. Yeah, these are lifters. I don't know if you can see it in the video here or not, but the offset, there's an offset on the intake side of these, and it's 180 thousandths offset. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the port on this cylinder head. We're going to end up making it wider. And so right now it's currently probably about 1/200 wide, and we are going to turn that into around 1/400 wide. And how we're going to do that is we're going to use an offset lifter, and we're going to use an offset rocker. Now you can give me the rocker.
Yes, here you go.
So, yeah, there you go. So we're going to use an offset rocker, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to move the push rod over. So we're going to modify this port, and we're going to epoxy it all up and move the push rod tube over so that we can get it a little wider.
And not only are we going to be using offset rockers, but we're going to use shaft rockers.
Yes, this is a great idea because it stabilizes your valve train tremendously. You can use a stud mounted rocker with a stud girdle, and that's okay. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't like stud girdles personally because they break rocker studs. I prefer a shaft system, and that's what this is. And what that means is there's a shaft that runs through here, and it mounts on a stand on the cylinder head instead of having the stud up here. There's a shaft, and it keeps, as you can tell, what's going to happen is it's going to offer a lot of stability to this. It's not going to allow that rocker to move back and forth, so you don't lose a lot of lift, and it doesn't have a lot of harmonics in the valve train.
All right, so we're going to be using ARP studs throughout the whole block.
We're going to use ARP products for the cylinder head studs and main studs, probably cam and crank bolts and different fasteners in the engine. So yep, ARP is a big part.
And this is a 2-bolt main. This isn't a 4-bolt main. This is a 2-bolt 455.
Just like I ran back in the day, I was shifting my 2-bolt main with a factory crank and a factory cast connecting rod. I was shifting that thing at 6,800 back then. And so we're probably going to be spinning this motor pretty high because we're going to make the port wider, which will allow us to use a little more RPM out of the engine. And it's still going to be a 2-bolt main block.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's everything for this build, right?
Yeah. So stay tuned, everybody, because you know what? When we come back, we're gonna start the. It's gonna start with the cylinder heads. We're gonna start.
Yep.
We're gonna start with those, and we're gonna get those the way we want them for this build. And so make sure to follow us along here on DCI Motorsports YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And I look forward to seeing you guys come back. And you know what? I need a beer.
All right. See ya.